Have you ever stopped to think about how many times a day you say, "I'll try to lose weight, try to make more money, try to be successful"? But what if I told you that this word might be sabotaging your life? What if the secret isn't to try harder, but to stop trying once and for all? Charles Bukowski, one of the most controversial writers of the 20th century, left behind a lesson that could completely change the way you live. On his tombstone, there are only 2 words: don't try. Why would a man who turned his failures into immortal works choose exactly that phrase? Get ready to discover the most brutal and liberating philosophy you've ever heard. One that goes against everything society teaches about effort and determination. Because sometimes the answer isn't in trying harder, but in accepting who you really are. Wisdom doesn't always come from where we expect it. It's not just the great philosophers or inspiring leaders who have something to teach us. Sometimes the deepest lessons come from those society has rejected, from the outcasts, from those who failed over and over again. Charles Bukowski is living proof of this. He discovered that there are raw truths hidden in the dark corners of life. Truths that only those who have lived through pain and failure firsthand can see. These rejects know life without filters. They have nothing to lose, so they can be completely honest. They don't need to keep up appearances, have no reputation to protect, owe explanations to no one. Pain has made them authentic in a way that success never could. When you lose everything, when society discards you, when there's nothing left to hide, a brutal clarity emerges about what really matters. And that's exactly where true wisdom begins, where the rose-colored world of forced optimism ends, where empty self-help advice stops, and truths that hurt but liberate begin. The outcasts understand that life isn't fair, that effort isn't always rewarded, that virtue doesn't always win. And this understanding, however painful it may be, is the first step toward real freedom. But who was this man who dared to challenge everything we know about motivation and success? Charles Bukowski wasn't your typical motivational hero. Born in Germany in 1920 and raised in the United States, he grew up in a troubled environment of poverty. His father was a bitter man who took his frustrations out on his son. This brutal childhood planted the seeds of a personality that would never fit social standards. Poet, novelist, self-declared alcoholic and natural provocateur, he was the anti-hero par excellence. His life was an endless sequence of misery, vices, and failures that repeated like a scratched record. But there was something different about him. A wild honesty that refused any kind of social veneer. Bukowski didn't try to be respectable. He completely embraced his wild nature and transformed his flaws into creative fuel. He drank too much, got into bar fights, had tumultuous relationships, and wrote about all of it without apologizing. His work was as raw as ground meat. He talked about sex without romance, work without purpose, dreams that died slowly. Even so, his writing has crossed decades and continues to impact people around the world. The secret? His only mission was to tell the truth no matter how ugly it was. While other writers polished their words to sound better, he let them bleed on the page. There were no heroes in his stories, just ordinary people dealing with mediocrity in extraordinary ways. For 30 long years, Bukowski lived a life that many would call a waste. He jumped from mediocre job to mediocre job, received editorial rejections like someone receiving bills to pay, and spent nights drowning loneliness in alcohol. He worked as a truck driver, doorman, store clerk, dishwasher, anything that paid the bills and left time to write. The literary society considered him too vulgar, inappropriate for consumption by decent people. His texts were rejected by publishers who found them obscene, without literary value, unsuitable for publication. Critics despised him, intellectuals ignored him. To the official world of literature, Bukowski simply didn't exist. But he kept writing, not out of hope that things would get better, not because of some grand plan for future success. He wrote because it was a vital impulse like breathing. Every morning after a night of drinking and before meaningless work, he sat at the typewriter and poured his guts onto paper. His life seemed directionless, but actually, it was being the perfect rehearsal for what was to come. Each rejection, each humiliation, each night of loneliness was building the material that would later become his masterpiece. The pain wasn't just marking him, it was gestating his art. Each failure was a lesson, each disappointment a blank page waiting to be filled. During these 3 decades of obscurity, Bukowski developed something rare: complete indifference to others' judgment. When you're rejected so many times, when you hear no so frequently, eventually it stops hurting. And in that moment of emotional anesthesia, a dangerous freedom emerges. The freedom to be exactly who you are. At 50 years old, when most people have already given up on their dreams and settled for mediocrity, Bukowski received a proposal that would change everything. A small publisher called Black Sparrow Press, run by John Martin, offered him a contract. But this meant a terrible choice: continue in the tedious safety of working at the post office, or risk everything on the uncertainty of writing. For any sensible person, the choice was obvious. He was 50 years old, had no savings, no guarantee that writing would work out. The post office job was tedious, but it paid the bills. It was predictable, safe, stable. Risking everything at 50 seemed like pure madness. But Bukowski saw something others couldn't see: the difference between dying slowly and living intensely. The post office job was killing him inside, one day at a time. Writing, even with all the risks, represented the chance to be truly alive. He chose to starve writing rather than die of boredom working. It was this leap into the dark that began his journey as a published author. No safety net, no plan B, no guarantees. Just the certainty that he'd rather fail being himself than succeed being someone else. His first novel was written in just 3 weeks. Decades of accumulated experience, years of silent observation, hundreds of stories stored in memory. All of this exploded onto paper like a dam that finally burst. Post Office wasn't just a book. It was the distillation of a lifetime of frustrations and insights. His real life began late, but with an intensity that made up for decades of waiting. At 50, when others think about retirement, Bukowski was just beginning. And this teaches us something profound about timing. Sometimes we're not late, just preparing for the right moment. What happened next defies our expectation that success should transform people into something morally superior. Even after achieving fame, Bukowski remained exactly the same: crude, drunk, politically incorrect. Fame simply amplified his wild nature. He kept drinking, kept fighting, kept writing about prostitutes and betting on horse races. Intellectuals expected him to evolve, to become more sophisticated, more worthy of success. He refused to become an improved version of himself. He simply continued living as he always had, intensely, without filters, without apologies. And this brings us to the first and most important lesson carved on his tombstone: don't try. At first glance, it seems to contradict everything we've learned about determination and effort. But Bukowski saw trying as disguised hesitation. A way to avoid what we already know is inevitable. When something is genuinely important to you, when it's part of your essence, you don't need to try. You simply do. Trying carries within it the possibility of failure, the ready excuse for when things don't work out. Really living requires total surrender, not calculated and measured effort. Think about when you say, "I'll try to love this person." True love isn't something you try. It's something that happens or doesn't happen. You don't try to breathe, you breathe. You don't try to make your heart beat. It beats. The most important things in life happen naturally, without forced effort. How many times do we use trying as an emotional emergency exit? I'll try to be happy. I'll try to follow my dreams. This language already prepares us for defeat before we even begin. Saying we're trying makes us socially acceptable, respectable, apparently making progress. Bukowski saw this as a sophisticated social mask. Society loves to value the attempt even when there's no real action behind it. He preferred the raw truth. It was more honest to fail completely being yourself than to fake effort in something that doesn't truly move you. This perspective reveals something shocking about success. Success isn't a reward for those who do everything right, who follow the rules, who keep their compos. Success isn't a reward for those who do everything right, who follow the rules, who keep their composure. Often it's an unexpected byproduct of those who accept their mistakes and failures without shame. Look at the great artists, revolutionary entrepreneurs, leaders who really made their mark. Few were goody two-shoes. Most had glaring flaws, deep contradictions, dark aspects they'd rather hide. But instead of spending energy trying to be perfect, they channeled all that energy into creating something unique. By writing openly about his miseries, vices, and humiliations, Bukowski created something genuinely original. While others tried to impress with sophisticated vocabulary and elevated themes, he talked about life as it really is. Messy, contradictory, often meaningless. People connect with imperfection, not perfection. When someone admits their flaws, when they show their scars, when they speak openly about their struggles, it creates genuine human connection. Perfection intimidates and distances. Imperfection invites and brings closer. What really set Bukowski apart was his absolute comfort with failure. He never sold himself as an example to be followed. He knew he was considered a loser by society, and that became his main raw material. His books are about losers, about ordinary people who can't fit in, about dreams that don't come true. Paradoxically, that's exactly what made him extraordinary. He found the universal in the particular, the epic in the everyday. When you accept your real condition without masks, a rare kind of freedom is born. The freedom of not having to pretend, of being able to tell the truth without fear of consequences. This freedom comes from having nothing left to lose, nothing to prove, no image to maintain. Bukowski took his flaws and transformed them into creative fuel. While most people spend energy trying to hide their failures, he put them center stage and made them the main show. But perhaps the most intense lesson is about total commitment. One of his most striking phrases says, "If you're going to try, go all the way, otherwise don't even start." This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind. Go all the way. There's no half-hearted commitment when it comes to something that really matters. You're going to lose things along the way. Relationships that can't handle the pressure. Financial comfort, social security. Some people will abandon you, others will criticize you, many will consider you crazy. But if what you're doing is genuinely yours, if it's part of who you are, these losses will be inevitable anyway. And each sacrifice will be worth it because living fully has a price too high for most people. Most back down when they see what needs to be paid. They prefer to stay in the comfort zone, in safe mediocrity, in risk-free life. But a few are willing to pay the full price, and these discover what it means to be truly alive. This journey of total commitment inevitably leads to isolation, and Bukowski saw this as an unexpected gift. Isolation separates the curious from the truly committed. It's like a natural filter that eliminates those who aren't really willing to pay the price. Many begin the journey with enthusiasm, but give up when they realize they'll be alone. When they discover that the crowd won't support them, that they'll have to continue without an audience or recognition, that most of the work will be done in solitude, without witnesses. Few can handle continuing in solitude. Most need constant approval, external validation, applause to maintain motivation. But those who can handle it, who persist even when no one is watching, these discover what Bukowski called the good fight. It's a battle fought without spectators, without applause, only with the company of one's own demons and the intimate certainty that it's worth it. It's a fight against mediocrity, against conformity, against the inner voice that whispers, "You should give up and be like everyone else." It's those who stay in this fight, who persist when everything seems lost. These discover something magical. In Bukowski's own words, "You burn with the gods and laugh with sincerity." There's a special quality in the laughter of those who survived isolation, of those who continued when all others gave up. This brings us to another radical lesson that challenges our culture obsessed with positivity. Beauty also exists in what is ugly and brutal. Bukowski wrote about shame, addiction, anger, existential emptiness, and did so without apologizing or trying to soften reality. Life is dirty, unfair, brutal. In many moments, it smells of sweat, tastes of tears, sounds of fights, and awkward silences. It has moments of deep loneliness, silent despair, questions that have no answers. Ignoring this reality is ignoring half of human experience. Those who seek only the beautiful side of existence condemn themselves to superficiality. It's like wanting to know the ocean but avoiding the dark depths. True depth requires courage to dive into murky waters, to explore the shadowy territories most prefer to avoid. Often the true meaning of life, true wisdom, is precisely in the places we prefer not to look. In moments of failure, in hours of loneliness, in periods of intense pain, Bukowski transformed these dark moments into art. He didn't romanticize them, just portrayed them with brutal honesty. This perspective reveals a truth that our wellness culture desperately tries to deny. You can't have just the good side of things. True love comes accompanied by jealousy, insecurity, fear of loss. Real freedom brings loneliness, responsibility, the weight of one's own choices. Greatness requires pain, sacrifice, the courage to disappoint people. Polarities coexist, are inseparable, like two faces of a coin. Trying to have only the positive side is like trying to have a coin with only one face, impossible and frustrating. Accepting duality is the first step toward real wisdom. The modern world spends fortunes trying to anesthetize pain, avoid discomfort, escape harsh reality. Antidepressants, infinite entertainment, social media, compulsive shopping, all to avoid confrontation with the most difficult aspects of existence. Bukowski did the opposite. He embraced pain and transformed it into art. He looked directly at his demons and invited them to dance. It's looking at the monster and saying, "You're part of me, and I'm going to use your strength to create something beautiful." This radical approach led him to a deep understanding about life's purpose. And here comes perhaps the hardest lesson to swallow. Finding your purpose isn't a Zen experience. It's not a positive vibe that leaves you at peace with yourself. Real purpose is carrying a cross. It's accepting a burden you chose, but that will hurt you every day. It's a heavy responsibility, an obsession that won't let you rest, a calling that demands constant renunciation. It's not comfortable. It's not easy. It's not relaxing. We only know something has true value when we're willing to suffer for it. If you're not suffering for something, if you're not paying a real price, if you're not sacrificing other important things, maybe you haven't even found what really matters to you. Suffering is the final test of authenticity. It's easy to say something is important when it costs nothing. It's easy to have passions that require no sacrifice. But when something forces you to choose, when it makes you give up comfort and security, that's when you discover if it's real or just a romantic whim. For Bukowski, writing wasn't a choice. It was a compulsion. He wrote even when he had no money for paper, even when no one wanted to publish, even when everyone said it was a waste of time. He wrote because he couldn't stop, because it was stronger than him. This philosophy sustained him through hundreds of failures. He was rejected more times than most people even try. He was ridiculed by critics, ignored by editors, considered literary trash for decades. He received enough rejection letters to wallpaper a room. But he persisted, not out of pride or stubbornness, but out of vital necessity. Writing was his way of screaming, of proving he was still alive, of leaving a mark on the world that tried to erase him. It was his way of breathing in a world that seemed to have insufficient oxygen. Those who seek their true purpose need a strong stomach to endure the world's silence, society's deafness, generalized indifference. You might have to knock on 200 doors before one opens. And even then, that one door might not be exactly what you expected. You might work for years on something no one seems to value. Your family might not understand. Your friends might consider you crazy. Society might see you as a failure. And you'll have to continue anyway, fed only by the intimate certainty that you're doing what you must do. This separates dreamers from achievers. The ability to continue even when everything seems impossible. Dreamers stop at the first difficulty, the first rejection, the first sign that the path won't be easy. Achievers understand that difficulty is part of the process, and this brings us to the most brutal and liberating conclusion of all of Bukowski's philosophy. The final lesson is simple on the surface but revolutionary in its depths. Stop trying to live and start really living. Love without calculating risks or measuring chances of success. Suffer without trying to avoid or anesthetize the pain. Make mistakes without apologizing or trying to justify each false step. Scream when life gets tough, when injustice hurts, when mediocrity suffocates. Fail with dignity, knowing you tried something worthwhile. Desire intensely, even risking disappointment. Don't turn your existence into an eternal rehearsal for a life that never comes. Don't spend forever preparing, qualifying, waiting for the perfect moment, trying to gather enough courage. The moment is now. You are as you are with all the flaws and limitations. And that has to be enough. Stop waiting to be ready. Stop waiting to be sure. Stop waiting for conditions to be ideal. Live with total intensity, even knowing it might destroy you, even risking regret, even facing the possibility of spectacular failure. Because here's the final truth that Bukowski discovered after decades of suffering and a few years of success. You'll be destroyed anyway. Time will take you. Life will break you. People will forget you. The world will move on without you. That's the only absolute certainty we have. The only real choice you have is deciding what you want to be destroyed by. Let it be for something you truly loved, something that was worth every scar, every tear, every sleepless night. Let it be for a passion that consumed you, for a dream that obsessed you, for a cause that transformed you. It's better to burn intensely for something significant than to be slowly consumed in mediocrity. It's better to fail trying something extraordinary than to succeed at something that doesn't matter. It's better to live 5 years as a lion than 50 as a sheep. This is the most honest philosophy about life you'll find. It doesn't promise perpetual happiness, doesn't guarantee financial success, doesn't offer magic formulas to solve all problems. It offers something much more valuable and much rarer. The possibility of living authentically without masks, without excuses, without regrets. The chance to look back at the end of it all and know that you really lived, not just existed. That you felt everything there was to feel. That you experienced everything you had the courage to experience. That you were true to yourself even when it cost dearly. If this content touched something deep in you, if these ideas awakened something that was sleeping in your soul, don't let this energy get lost in the void of good intentions. Subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of discovery and transformation, because life is too short to be lived halfway. And if the video made you question your own attempts and surrenders, if it inspired you to stop rehearsing and start living, leave your like. This helps more people find these truths that can change a life, because in the end, maybe that's exactly it. Stop trying to be who you're not and start being who you've always been. Freedom is waiting on the other side of your courage to be authentic.